Good morning, everybody. About an hour after I recorded yesterday's video, I just spent some time looking into what could be this tropical system that's coming up the East Coast. And I just wanted to go back and delete the video and do it again and say, I really think this has more potential. If you remember, we talked a lot about, the NAM model really spinning up a pretty sizable system here. And I kind of discounted the NAM because it's not typically one of the better models used for this, but maybe it had a better handle on it than I anticipated, because the animation you've been watching here is just looking back over the last half day or so at the cloud top temperatures. This is basically a way by which we measure the strength of any storm system. And this one's looking a bit more potent than originally thought. So should this later on today, because I usually record this before the National Weather Service and the National Hurricane Center do their morning updates on this, should this get named? I just went and checked just so you know, it would be named Ophelia. So it would not be Ophelia, it's Ophelia. That's how you'd say it, just to be clear on what the name of this next system is going to be. As of right now, let's see if they did any updates between no new updates. This is the 5 a.m. Eastern time update. It's still called Potential Tropical Cyclone 16, which means it has some of the characteristics needed to be a tropical cyclone, but and it's expected to produce tropical storm strength winds. In fact, it already is at 50 miles an hour. But it is currently projected to move just like this. And so we're going to have to take a look at how much rainfall this is going to mean to this area, because as we've been discussing, this has been an area that has been in drought, part of the Mid-Atlantic into North Carolina here. So let's go have a look at the couple of the different parameters. The peak storm surge is expected to be around 5 feet right here along the Carolina coast, and a little bit less the farther north you go, but this will produce some coastal erosion. That's a pretty deep storm surge from a tropical system of this strength. Right now, the latest forecast models are trying to put the center of the circulation over North Carolina. There's pretty tight clustering of where this is going to be coming in, right in through here. This will be by early in the morning on Saturday, when it's expected to make landfall here at tropical storm strength, which means winds below 74 miles an hour, and then move up through the weekend all the way into Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, and eventually what's left of it getting into Pennsylvania, New Jersey. And at this point, there's a pretty sizable spread on where this circulation will go. And we'll take a look at some of those reasons why in just a few seconds here. But again, just kind of get an idea on the timing of when this system is going to be coming through. So let's look at how much rainfall we're expecting out of this. And so we're going to play this morning's high-res European model run, and we're going to watch through Saturday. So this is through midday Saturday, getting into Sunday morning right here. And then let's go take this all the way to Monday morning. So we'll stop this at 12Z on Monday. There we are. So there will be pretty widespread 2-inch rainfall event out of this, as you can see in these darker shades of red. Some places picking up 3 to 4 inches, maybe higher than that, out of what could be named Ophelia. So let's watch this one carefully, and let's take a quick look at the forecasted wind field out of this. So we're going to run something called wind gust swath, and so it's going to add up over time and look for the maximum wind. So we're expecting a lot of 40 to 50 mile an hour gusts in this area, possibly even higher in some locations, with the strongest winds remaining offshore. Speaking of offshore, what we're also going to be watching is some pretty high wave action. So let's just play this through to see when the strongest waves are coming through. This is tonight. We played this out into tomorrow morning on Saturday, and we'll see right here off Cape Hatteras, some of these waves approaching 15 to 18 feet in depth, and that's some pretty sizable waves, and they will move up the East Coast on Sunday morning as this system progresses pretty quickly to the north. So this is kind of the latest in terms of the threat we're going to see out of what could be named Ophelia, and it's expected to stay below hurricane status right now. It's the information we've got early this morning, but potentially drop a lot of rainfall and give about 5 feet of storm surge here along the Carolina coast, getting up here toward parts of Virginia and then getting into Delaware. This region right in through here is where we're going to watch most carefully. So that's the latest I've got, and I want you to be just staying very weather aware if you're in this area watching my content this morning. All right. Your best resources, I'm sure you know, if you're watching and you live in this part of the country, go to the National Hurricane Center, nhc.noaa.gov, nhc.noaa.gov. That's your best resource. Okay, outside of that, we still have quite a bit of activity going on across the United States that just needs a lot of attention here. This is the deep upper level cutoff low. See how it's almost making complete circulation here. That's a good sign that this system is closed off, and that's what's going to make it go pretty slowly. Last night, we watched very large storms that kind of popped up here in the central plains of the United States. Some of these produced some very locally heavy rainfall, more hail. Saw some straight line wind damage and an isolated tornado out of this. You can also see some of the wetter conditions that have been through parts of Illinois, right through here, some locally very heavy rain that moved through. Around this upper level low, we produced quite a bit of precipitation. You can still see the wildfires that are on the western edge of this over in parts of Oregon and northern California. But it was a pretty interesting satellite animation to watch yesterday as the sun was setting across the country. Some of these storms in the midsection of the country did produce, again, more severe weather. We had 50 reports, some hailers in here, some pretty large hail as I was kind of looking through this. A lot of 2.5-2-inch stones, 1 4-inch stone here in Dawson County, Nebraska. This was a pretty potent go of it. So I decided to look back quickly on the last 3 days of hail. And we just kind of take a quick look here in the midsection of the country. These storms were last night. These were the ones 3 days ago. Not yesterday, but the day before, forgive me. And again, just putting down some pretty nasty hail throughout the midsection of the country. We just continue to be on this above average trend for hail for this entire year. On radar, though, let's take a look at what the last 12 hours has given us here. And we've locally produced some heavy rainfall that's moved through the midsection of the country, also moved through parts of Illinois here. And then you can see kind of curling around this side of the Snake River Valley, really in the high elevation just to the south, and then getting into parts of Montana, some locally very heavy rain out of this as well. I look back over the last 3 days, and this was the map we had at 5 a.m. In fact, I think it just turned 6 a.m. Did we get a new update? Yeah. So this is the 6 a.m. update just right now came in. And again, locally, look at some of these spots in through here. Now, there is some hail contamination in the data here, but locally, very, very heavy rainfall throughout the central United States, getting over here to the central Corn Belt. And we can also see the bigger storms that have been in Florida recently as well. But that low that's spinning, because it is cut off, it's going to take a while to get across the country. We talked about this, right? So we'll be talking about this low when I do my next video for all of you on Monday. It'll still be spinning over here, and I want to take a look at what we're expecting out of it. So today, the severe weather threat's coming out of Wyoming, hitting parts of Nebraska and in South Dakota. Of course, we'll be watching right here along coastal North Carolina as what could potentially be named Ophelia moves through this region. Tomorrow, a much broader area opens as the low begins to eject into the northern plains. We'll take a look at the position of that low in a few moments, but a long area here through which we could expect some strong winds and also hail threat. There is isolated tornado threat here as well, but mostly a wind and hail threat. But that's a lot of acres that are very near harvest that cannot take any wind stress out of storms. So this will be a critical situation to watch through this whole area here on Saturday. By the way, Saturday is our equinox. Happens, I think, at 1 a.m. or sometime around then. And then after that, we kind of officially start fall. Okay. Then here's day 3. So the sagging tail end of that front still sitting down the Red River Valley of the south, getting into parts of Texas here. So I want to go straight to the high-res NAM. Let's pick this up about 7 o'clock this morning. I think the NAM was decently initialized to kind of give us an idea on what to expect here. As you saw a few moments ago in the radar imagery, right at the tail end, we were watching this line of storms that was moving through eastern Nebraska. And so when I say a model was decently initialized, what I'm talking about is, is it capturing where the rainfall is right now? And we can see that it did a halfway decent job with this. So let's play through the rest of the morning. This is getting out to midday. This is this afternoon and this evening. So the low is out. Locally, very heavy rainfall coming through a few areas. And now we can see a potential tropical cyclone 16, maybe Ophelia, moving here on shore late tonight. So this particular region is desperate for rainfall. They've got to get soil moisture values up. I know there's a lot of harvest efforts that are going on here, but we need it. It's not just here. It's back in the northern plains as well. It's into Montana. This system is putting down rain where we need it, and so is the tropical system here. We talked about that yesterday. So let's get into Saturday morning. So this is 9 a.m. What we're going to play here is through the day, we're going to watch this whole corridor for potential storms. Ready? So this is 10 a.m. There we go. That gets us into the Saturday afternoon and evening. And we're going to watch for the potentially stronger storms that come through here, producing some straight line wind damage. I think that's the biggest threat. Locally, there's the potential for some very heavy rain in southeastern Kansas, as well as this low curls its way up into the northern plains. Now, how far to the east this heavy rainfall makes it is still under question because, as I said, the system's cut off. It has no motivation in the atmosphere, that's translation of upper level winds, to move east. And so as a result, we're curious as to how much of this rain gets over the Mississippi River. And so by the time we get into Sunday afternoon, you can see the main frontal boundaries just sitting right here. Now, as that happens, what is left of the tropical system still spins off of parts of Pennsylvania and over toward New Jersey. And then we're going to watch this, the next big system coming into the Pacific Northwest. Stitch it all together. This is your next 7 days from the WPC. We just kind of use this as a benchmark overall for the precipitation pattern. Now you can start to see that hard edge. We're much drier to the west of it. And we're going to watch a system, a deeper trough coming in the west that could put down heavy rain in places where we do desperately need it, like the Willamette Valley, the I-5 corridor up toward the Puget Sound, and back down here on this side of like the Klamath Mountain Range into northwestern California where those wildfires are. You can see the model and its projection of the heavy rains here. So we do get up into this 3 to 5 inch range, some locally heavier with the potential tropical cyclone moving into this area. I would like to compare this, though, to the European model and the GFS as well. But before I do that, you probably noticed this week I really heavily favored the European model. So I want to provide some reasoning why. We watched since the beginning of September the GFS, which is in red, its skill scores oscillated a lot. So it was adding more uncertainty than it was adding value, in my opinion, on the forecast. So I backed away from it. We've lately seen them come closer together, and both of them are actually jumping up a bit now in their skill scores. So while the European model's been outperforming the GFS by an average of about 4%, we're gonna use them both today. I do also want to thank Ryan Maui for letting me show this graphic. It's an incredible graphic just to gauge the strength of the skill of these systems. So here you go. Let's blow it up for you there. That is the next 7 days from the European model. So pause it, take a close look, because we're going to walk through these features in a second. Here's the GFS. Now remember, the GFS is a lower resolution model. That's why they look a little different here. So this is the European, and that is the GFS. And if you compare the two, this is what you end up getting. So on this map, I haven't shown it in a while. We'll look at it a lot over winter, though. These colors represent where the GFS is wetter, and these colors represent where the European model is wetter. So we're subtracting one from the other. And it's important to note that for most of this section of the country, the Western Corn Belt here, the European model is the wetter model. The GFS is wetter kind of in a few corridors here that we just need to highlight. And it's important to just watch when this is all done to verify, which model was right overall. The GFS is stronger with the system coming in, the second one coming into the Pacific Northwest. We'll show you that in a second. And it's also much wetter in parts of potential tropical cyclone 16 that could be right here in parts of Maryland, Delaware, getting up to New Jersey. But on the northern side of this, you can see the European is much wetter. So it's a good way to look at the models and compare them. So hopefully you like this particular product here. But now let's step through them. So what I've got is GFS on the left, European on the right. Now we've already played through Saturday into Sunday. So let's just park it there early Sunday morning, where we're seeing what's left of potential tropical cyclone 16 or Ophelia. Here it is in both models. And now we see the deeper low that's cut off from the flow, and the newest deep cyclone that's just off the coast. So right now, I really like this. Both models are very well aligned with the position of things, but they should be through 60 hours, okay? So let's play this through the rest of the day on Sunday, getting into Monday. Now, Monday afternoon and evening, what's left of this system is still sitting here, and it's kind of in that similar position in the models. The European is wetter into New England, and it's also got a sagging front down here in the south. That's also in the GFS. But they both have a deep low that is coming into the Pacific Northwest. But you'll watch, if you keep an eye on this, the GFS is more aggressive with that low, bringing in heavier rains into the Northwest by next Monday into Tuesday than the European is over here on the right. So as we play this through Tuesday and get out there into Wednesday, much deeper low coming in, heavier rains in the Pacific Northwest. But a lot of the rest of the country gets just a little bit of a break overall. By the time we get out there about day 6, 7, notice that the GFS is kicking off a system here that is not evident in the European model. And they both have a low that has kind of moved back over this section of the country. This is next Thursday, all right? So this is out there kind of far, and we're seeing, some pretty sizable model differences, especially with this shortwave that sneaks out in the GFS but not in the European. And so we'll watch that over the weekend, but some more heavy rain coming into this area. So that's some of the differences we need to just look at here. I do want to point out that there's some snow, more snow coming into the mountains. This is just a look at the last 72 hours. We'll start all new snow maps for a new snow season on the 30th. So I can't show you like totals for this season just yet. I haven't made that myself, and the website doesn't provide it, but we just got some snow put down here. And with the next deep trough coming in, you saw it, right? Watch the snowfall add up there. So this is now, that's through Sunday as the current low moves out. And then this right there at the very end of this run is the next system. So that one's pretty deep and pretty cold and has some potential to put down some bigger snow at very high elevation. So there you go. We're going to start looking at snow maps a whole lot more. Okay, probability maps. This is the best chance of getting an inch over the next 7 days. So starting in Texas through Oklahoma, southeast Kansas, Missouri, then you come over right here into parts of most of Iowa, and then right in through this area. This is hitting an area that has been exceptionally dry. We're still adding more rainfall today into Montana. This is the next system that rolls in, and here you have the tropical cyclone coming up the East Coast. Let's go after 2 inches now to get an idea there. That's the best chance of 2. And then we're probably going to see 4-inch totals, yep, here. And then the potential here in North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, that region could get some really heavy rain. The drier side of things, this is where the probability of getting less than half of an inch showed up. And I just want to make a point that we watched all week the models increase rainfall totals in through here, but then we've lately seen a bit of a drier trend stemming all the way from or stretching, all the way from Mississippi and Alabama through the Tennessee Valley up to the the Central Great Lakes area. So we've turned it a bit drier in that region. All right, why are all these rains, I think, just so critical and important? It's, again, we come back to these same maps we've been talking about. We are expecting to see a lot of moisture getting in to this area, and lately we've seen some heavier rains coming through Illinois as well. So what we're seeing is about working that moisture into the soil pre-harvest for a lot of people in this area, and getting it stored in there, getting it to kind of percolate into the ground and be great for fall application, and also really start to improve the Mississippi River levels. We are currently today 9 feet below low stage. It's been bouncing between 8 and 10 feet all week, and it's so great to see that rainfall coming into this area to help revive this major river system. So we look at it at Memphis. I don't know if I've ever told you why I look at Memphis, but this is after the Ohio and after the Missouri River have come into the Mississippi. It is a great place to just gauge the strength of the entire water system there. So that's why I look at Memphis like this. Okay, week 2. I've had some bigger questions about week 2. And we've seen the models continue to go after, about 10 days from now, which is October the 2nd, deeper troughs in the west. And that the flow has just been doing something like this in every model run all week long. And I get this sense that the models get into this pattern and don't break away from it because the waves get really long. Remember, we talked about that yesterday. So as I've been thinking about this all week, I want to know if there's strong evidence to see more of these deeper West Coast troughs. And here's the reason why. They bring in snow to the mountains early. They bring in flow to the Pacific Northwest and to California early. They then flow across the country with southwest flow into the Midwest. And what that typically does is that initiates good flow out of the south, which brings in Gulf moisture and tends to kick off a lot of storm systems in this area. And you know that's been a top area I've been concerned about because of the water issues we've got going on there and drought. This is a drier signal for the southeast, but it's wet for the Midwest and cold and wet for the West. So I want to know if this is going to last longer and longer and longer. So I'm trying to find evidence for and evidence against. Now, my evidence against is that we don't have any major blocking across the whole of the Northern Hemisphere. So I would not expect this pattern to just get stuck and stay stuck forever. In fact, I not forever, but for a couple of weeks or 3 or 4 weeks. I think it is going to be open and move more than I think being advertised in the models. But my evidence for is that we've got some pretty long waves in the atmosphere, and we've got the MJO getting into a configuration that's supportive of this. So can you stuff that in the back of your mind for a second? Because what I want to show you is the near-term effect. You put a trough here, and this is where the week 2 forecast models are putting the wet weather. So you see it's all in through here. It's deeper troughs in the west ejecting into this region. So you can see where the models are all going after near normal to above normal rains. But under the ridge from the southeast up into the northeast, that's where they're drier. So if I was in this region and thinking about the forecast, I would be telling you it's going to be like this week on, week off, week on, week off. You're going to get a week where you're going to get some moisture pull through, then it's going to pull back, and then it's going to go again. But I think much more regular activity across the western United States to the central United States with this particular setup. Now, keep, again, the idea in the back of your mind, because I need to build up the temperature part of this narrative, and then we'll get back to it to finish this video. All right, so next, our all hazards weather map this morning. Here's our tropical storm warnings over here. We do have a storm surge warning farther to the north. But as you look back into the west, we're going to be dealing with some fog this morning here. There's a freeze warning out for parts of Oregon and California. Winter weather advisories here. We just showed you the snowfall forecast for this area. So we've got quite a bit to contend with here as this next system comes out. Frost-wise, this is what we've got, mostly in the mountains over the next 7 days. So not east, maybe parts of Maine, but this is not uncharacteristic for this time of year. This is what we see in terms of high temperatures, though. So today's high temps, getting into tomorrow. This is Saturday, of course, rain-cooled air here, deeper trough in the west, heat stretching out ahead of this system. This is what's setting up the risk of severe storms into this area. This is going into Sunday and Monday. Let's play this out to next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. See, we're cooler east, cooler west, but a ridge is opening here. Remember, by next Thursday, what's going on is this jet stream's doing this with a little cutoff to the south of it. So that's what your flow is going to look like a week from yesterday. From after this, let's go into This is the maps I love to show you, your next 15 days. Ready? 5 days sliding window of average temperature anomalies. This is the next 5 days. That's day 5 through 10, and then day 10 through 15. So do you notice that when you get out there through the first full week of October, we seem to keep colder air here and then run a ridge here. Now, if you were to look at all of the analog years for developing El Niños, this is not what they typically start off with. The October tends to bring in a lot of cold air into the midsection of the country and ridge out the west. But I don't think we have that particular setup evolving right now, and that's why I showed you that upper level map of the troughs and ridges and my concern over it getting stuck maybe through the first 10 days of October. And the reason why that's significant is the first 10 days of October, this is a big time to get frost in these areas. So we might be warmer than average to start off October, but I wouldn't just sit on it yet because we could see some fluctuation. So here you go. This is the newest update from the European models forecast of the MJO. Now remember, there's a lot of different factors that go into this, but what I'm overall seeing is some movement like that. It's not high amplitude, but there's some movement. I think it's more easily seen when we look at the velocity potentials. What I'm watching for is this. Now, there's two big reasons I'm watching for this. The first is that from now all the way to the 7th of October, we're going to watch, so you can look at it this way, you can look at it this way. We're going to watch the progression of better rising motion go here. And that's going to be critical for our tropical cyclone season, the position of the subtropical jet, the polar jet's position, and what happens in South America. But that progression here is what I'm most curious about, because should the MJO really begin to favor in the month of October, phase 7 and 8, we will see the eventual results of that looking something like this. Now, we talked about this yesterday, but if the MJO gets into phase 8, the 2 to 3 weeks following it could favor a big blocking ridge over Greenland and a deeper, more persistent trough of low pressure that sits here. So we may finish September with a deep trough in this area, begin the month of October with a much weaker one, and then go right back into it. And this sets things up to be very active in the midsection of the country. Now, it's common in October when there is an El Nino to see the jet stream doing this. This is why typically El Ninos bring in cooler conditions for the west and the central United States, but very active right here where I'm kind of coloring in. We're now starting to see that showing up in some of the models. We talked about it yesterday, but again, this is the new October forecast. And again, we start to see just a quarter in through here beginning to open up, showing more systems rolling through the midsection of the country, while we're drier overall farther to the east. Now, this particular forecast is supported by the CFSV2. Let's go look at it real fast. I mean, we're already pretty long in the video. You've hung on this long, you might as well keep going. Look, week 2, October 5th through the 10th, see where it's wetter in the central United States. The 12th through the 18th, see where it's wetter in this region. So this is critical for agriculture in the midsection of the country, this whole region. What will be very important is to see how the west plays out with this, and if we do finally bring in better moisture into the east with this as well. Because remember, October is big hurricane part of our season as well, so let's not forget that aspect of this too. All right, now new updates from our government. This is the newest update from their seasonal drought outlook, and just like we discussed, they have taken away the risk of drought development in this area. We had talked about that. I think they're going to get rid of that. They did. They now went over to improvement between now and the end of this year. They've also updated their new 1-month outlook. This is their projection for what October is going to look like. They are overall mild, but you see this equal chances. This is what would happen if that deeper trough set up and brought in intrusions of colder air. They are wetter across a broad sector of the country, and we could make an argument that this particular region in October may be seeing better moisture coming in than what's being alluded to here. Now, I don't think that's going to be the case for the rest of winter. You know that I've been worried about drought developing in the Northwest this winter, but October is what we're talking about. Now, speaking of winter, I also have new updates for the longer range. This is the new October, November, December outlook from the CPC. And when you come to this website, I want you to do that, cpc.ncep.noaa.gov. That's cpc.ncep.noaa.gov. Click on the word 3-month outlook. See it up here? And you're actually taken to their actual model forecasts. And what we can do now is we can just go have another look at winter. They did not change very much their temperature outlook. They're expecting more mild conditions up north, punctuated with brief Arctic outbreaks. So more mild days than really, really cold days across the northern tier of the United States. And this is December, January, February, the whole of winter. On the precipitation side of it, let's go back, and you can click right over here on the P, and this is what they're figuring out. So again, very wet across the south, normal to above normal precipitation in the west. There's the dry risk. Now, when I look at this, I don't necessarily agree with this being wetter than average in this area because right now we have this east-based El Nino event, and I actually think we're going to be seeing more systems curling up out of the panhandles doing something like this. We're going to get those Arclitect lows that come over like this. We're going to get those Miller B systems that do this and the Miller A's that come out like that. I think those 4 areas are going to be quite critical. And remember, if the jet stream splits and has 2 components, so the subtropical component drives these 4 areas. If the polar branch has any influence, we get clippers that come down like this. So I look at all of that and say, I think that the Northwest runs the greatest risk of drought development, but I can't necessarily say that this has a high probability of being as dry as forecast. And the only reason why I care about all of this is because this map I need to have change by the time we get into spring of next year. Right now we're at 55% land area covered in drought. I expect major changes in the south, but this is a region that needs to see significant improvement, and I hope I am wrong about the Pacific Northwest this winter. So I've got one last place to cover, and if you remember, I don't even know where it is up here in my slides. There it is. I found it. Do you see this? Look where that ends up by the time we get into the first week of October. Better rising motion over South America, specifically Brazil. Right now, look, we have suppression. And that is why, for my last slides here, the next 5 to 7 days, nothing. That's 5 days out. No rainfall is expected, or very, very little rainfall is expected here. So we are now going to finish this month of September, without much going on here. All the wet weather's down south. But then you start to see in the models that it's really beginning to initiate better moisture. And now what I want you to see, look right up here. See that? This could be the beginning of the shift to get moisture to come in from this direction. Right now it's coming from here and there is none in it. So this will be an important trend for me to update you on for Monday. All right, that's all I got. I hope that was enough to kind of get you through the weekend. Maybe you have to watch this one in chunks. Don't forget on YouTube, you can always grab the slider bar at the bottom and move to the part you want to see. So you don't have to stick around for the full 25 or 30 minutes I usually talk about this stuff. But I appreciate that many of you do. I hope you all have a good weekend, and we'll talk next week. Thanks.